Serious, what question did you refuse to answer in a job interview? What's your zodiac sign? At first I thought it was a joke, but he went on to explain in detail that it was very important that all the signs of his employees were compatible with his to prevent drama in the workplace. Then he started telling me about his past lives. It was a weird interview. Why should we hire you when you just got married and will probably be starting a family soon? I initially refused to answer, but couldn't resist. By the end of the interview, telling them that I'd had my tubes tied for years and literally couldn't have kids. You should have refused, then sued them for gender discrimination. My race. They were interviewing to fill several positions at an office near downtown, where they were in need of Spanish-speaking workers because the area served is mostly Hispanic. The interviewer asked me what is my race and where is my family from. He asked this because he saw that I am fluent in Spanish. I am mixed, but look very white. He seemed a little perturbed that I was fluent in his native language. He kept questioning my race and why do I speak Spanish. I let him know that I have spoken Spanish since I first learned to speak. I had dual primary languages in my home. I took Spanish in high school and college. I was hired by the college as a Spanish tutor, yet he doubted my knowledge because of my light skin. He did this to a girl I was chatting with in the waiting area too. I could hear her interview because they were doing them in cubicles, not private. With her he insisted she couldn't really speak Spanish. The girl was black, but she was from Belize. Anyhow, we were both hired even though he failed us on our spoken language portion. She and I wrote grievances and had him removed, as well as our scores corrected. He interviewed another girl I knew who looks very Hispanic, but barely speaks Spanish and does not write it. He gave her a 100. At my office I found out he had given anyone that looked white or black very low scores, even if they aced the interview. What social media do I use? And that I would be required to friend a member of the HR department. Nothing happened. There is a big trial going on at the time over employers' right to spy on their employees online, so they didn't push it. I got my old job because the HR woman looked at my Facebook and someone else's. She must have been a dong, and apparently there was hardly anything on mine. Glad I got the job, but it felt intrusive. What church do you attend? I told them I didn't really think it was relevant to doing the job. They thought otherwise. You'd probably have a very nice lawsuit waiting in the wings for even being asked that question unless you were applying at a church. In the course of one interview I was asked, are you married, do you have kids, are you pregnant, when do you plan on becoming pregnant, how old are you? The interviewer then proceeded to tell me she needed to ask these questions because the last LA she hired was pregnant and left for mat leave within 5 months, and interviewer was not happy with that. The kicker? I was interviewing at a civil law firm and being interviewed by a paralegal. I'm a girl and have a trade and have always worked with only men. Most interviews bring up the subject in a polite way, like situational questions asking what I would do if a co-worker was being sexist, etc. One particular interview with a company called Schlumberger, the interviewer straight out asked if I have a boyfriend. I said no, more out of shock. He continued on to say that I'm very young and around the age where I will probably get pregnant. I just sat there and stared. He then asked me if I planned on getting pregnant because if so, they would not hire me. Every single question he asked was specifically about the fact that I'm a girl and there were no job related questions. I just said thanks but no thanks. This is 100% illegal in the US and most countries. This guy asked me a bunch of word puns and riddles. I answered one thinking he was joking, then asked him what the point was and he didn't know. Later in the interview he asked me if I could promise I wouldn't get pregnant for my first year there. AT&T. I got the job. This explained so much. I had a few in the only interview I ever did. For a farm machinery sales agent. Can you safely say that you won't have any serious accidents whilst working here? Have you ever been pregnant? Or are you going to become pregnant in the next 8 months? Have you ever had a boyfriend? And if yes, did you have sex while together? Are you still together? I got asked to write down my Facebook and Gmail passwords so they could look at them and deem me satisfactory. I noped the frick out of there. Not only is it illegal, but it's none of their business. Oh, a trick question. I would just answer that I am very serious in my password policies and would never hand them over to anybody else. Not a job interview but an orientation of new hires, and as an icebreaker for the new employees was to go around and tell people our sexual orientation. So inappropriate. Myself and 3 other new hires noped right out after we refused and were told the point of the exercise was to create trust in fellow co-workers. I walked out when they asked me to sign a ridiculous multi-page non-compete agreement that required me to turn over any intellectual property I ever came to acquire. Why a pretty girl like you look for a job? You should just find a rich guy and get married. Previous salary. It's none of their business. I will talk about the salary range that I'm interested in, but answering previous salary questions will only frick you. The correct response is industry standard. This was during a mock interview while I was in college. The professor had her husband come in and we had to go in, one by one, and do an interview. Just like in real life. Well, everyone is going in and coming out smiling. Not taking too long, so I thought it would be a cakewalk. My turn is next. I go in and everything is going smoothly. He takes a look at my resume and sees that I was in the military. He asks, tell me about your time in the military. So I tell him what I did. That I worked with a variety of different people from different backgrounds, with different views on life and opinions, and that I supervised people, etc. He says okay, good, and continues with the interview. Asks a few more questions. Then says, tell me about your time in the military. I figured maybe he didn't realize he already asked me that, or maybe it was a test, so I repeated what I said. He starts turning slowly in his chair, looking at the ceiling and says again, tell me about your time in the military. I just looked at him. He stopped spinning in his chair and looked at me. After about 20 seconds, he says, okay, we're done here. I got a B. You should have shouted out your name, number and rank and refused to answer any more questions in accordance with Article whatever of the Geneva Convention. When I lived in DC, had an interview with the mayor's office. Mind you, he was a mayor I didn't particularly like. When I got there, it was like 75 people waiting in a big room. When it was finally my turn, they brought me into another room. The first 5 minutes were standard interview questions, but the two 20-year-olds conducting the interview were completely uninterested. Neither of them looked up from their Blackberries once. I was getting extremely irritated, as I knew I had much more political experience than them anyway. So when one of them, with her face still in her Blackberry, said, tell me 5 things you love about Mayor Fenty, I had it. I said, I think we're done here, and got up and left. That got them to look at me. Not refused to ask, but did ask a question that put my interviewer on the spot. At the have you any questions bit, I noted that they were making some major changes to what they were doing that meant a great deal of upheaval and cost, yet I could see no noticeable business benefit. So I asked what the business benefit was. You could actually see the cogs whirring. My interviewer thinking, crap, that's a dang good question, and I have no idea what the answer is. I still think I didn't get that one because I embarrassed him. Similar thing happened to me, except when he went with the do you have any questions, I shocked him by having 2. He told me I was the only person who actually had questions for him. He struggled to answer the questions. I did not get the job. I wonder if the reason is because he got embarrassed too. Not necessarily during a job interview, but I was looking to become a supervisor at a previous job, and was asked by the hiring manager if I'd be okay with dating his friend to get the job. I refused. Girl that did get the job ended up dating his friend. Before anyone asks, no, I don't regret it not dating the friend. I regret not going to head office and reporting him. Do you have any kids? He was the CEO of the company I was interviewing at. I made a face. Said, are you supposed to ask me that? He looked surprised and said he needed someone who can be at the job on a regular basis. Then I thanked the guy for his time and left. Why do you want to be in this business? It was an excellent question, and I decided that I didn't want to be in that business, so I thanked the interviewer for his time and called it a day. Been there. How much I was currently being paid. I said that was between me and my current employer. I got the job at a higher salary that I thought they would have offered otherwise. I work for a major university, and we have an Office of Disability Services, which can assist you in accommodating a disability, etc. So, I technically do have a disability according to the university's parameters. and therefore I fall under this protection. I've been shopping around for a different job at the same institution, and in one interview they actually asked me what my disability was. I was shocked they would ask, since that is pretty expressly forbidden by university policy, and refused to answer. I didn't get a call back, but based on them asking I didn't want to work there either. I may have dropped an anonymous note to HR about it. Would you and your wife be interested in this traveling swingers club I help run? We could show you the town, get you to meet new people. It'll be fun. I was the interviewer. I'm a guy. Interviewee was a girl. And in case you were curious about what question to never ask in an interview, this is among the top 10. No, I didn't answer it. I just said that we're out of time, and I had to go. HR will show you out. Someone will be in contact. See you later. Goodbye. Nice knowing you. Too bad you can't stay. What happened was that she was banned from ever applying, and since Silicon Valley is so close-knit, I'm sure the HR types got the word out that she was a walking sexual harassment suit waiting to happen. Which of the other candidates I thought best fit the job? This was an opening in the company I was working for at the time, so all internal candidates, whom I knew. I had an employer actually ask me if I was a Christian. I'm not. He said that they follow Christian principles in their business and they'd like to know how I would fit in. I told him that it's illegal to ask that question and I'm not comfortable answering it. He ended the interview right there. I didn't get the job, which I'm glad for, because working there sounds like my personal heck. I should have sued and just taken it easy for a few years. It's not illegal for them to ask, it's illegal for them to make their hiring decision based on it. Most places won't ask because they don't want to open themselves to potential litigation in the future, but the act of asking is perfectly legal, although not advisable. The CIA asked me what laws I would be willing to break if I was hired by them. I didn't really know how to answer and said I would have to know more about the situation. I didn't get the job. I think the real answer was none. However, that is just what you are supposed to say. I may not refuse to answer a question outright, but depending on the personality of the interviewer, I will make jokes about the questions, especially if it's obvious that they think the questions are stupid too. The biggest one for me is, what is your biggest flaw? If I know the interviewer is receptive to jokes, I'll reply with something like a low tolerance for irrelevant questions. We had a good laugh about it and moved on to the next question in the interview. Oh, also, you're okay with having sex with me and the rest of the guys, right? We like to pay the girls more when they do that. I mean, you'll still get your tips and everything, but you can get more if you frick us. It was about a month and a half ago. I was applying for a job as a dancer. Okay, a stripper, at a local strip club right after I turned 18 because I wanted to start making money for college and it seemed like it'd be easy money. I mean, I understand that there are stereotypes that strippers are ass, and after meeting some, believe me, there's plenty of truth to it, but it doesn't mean I'm going to put out for every old guy I see, even if he's my boss or colleague. Plus the guy interviewing me was the manager, who was in his 60s. Just number. I'm totally okay with lap dancing on just about any guy as long as he's got singles in his pocket, but actual sex is completely different and pretty much out of the question in the context of a strip club. The rest of the guys was referring to the bouncers. The fact that the bouncers were in on it and literally their only job is to keep the dancers safe didn't make me feel much better about it. Are they really going to keep me safe if all the other girls are fricking them and I'm not? They also told me earlier in the conversation that they encouraged the girls to actually have sex in the back room for money. That was what raised a few red flags initially, but having them straight up ask if I was okay with having sex with the male employees raised more red flags than a parade in Moscow. So I just noped the frick out of there. It's the only strip club around here that's easy to get to, so I'm giving up on getting a job doing that for a little while. A few weeks later I told some friends and they said I should notify the police, so I did that about 2 weeks ago. I don't know what the police are doing about it. TLDR. Strip club manager just kinda assumed 18-year-old girl is totally into 60-year-old strip club managers. Glad you made the choice and didn't enter that place. You wouldn't have been the same afterwards. Interview question at a small consulting firm in DC. Did great work. friends there with nice salaries and benefits. I put down on my resume, as a consultant at another firm this line, paraphrasing for privacy and not doxing myself. Optimized performance and logistics of new product line, increasing profit margins by 30% at big firm. It's one of my huge achievements, and leaving out details was never a problem for any other consulting firms like McKinsey for example. I didn't mention who that big client on the resume that I was working for, because most of them are supposed to be confidential. The interviewer's eye fell on that bullet, and as I revealed a couple of details like industry, my role, how I did the job, the achievement, etc., she insisted on asking who the client was, which doesn't really matter at that point. I kept rebuffing her, stating that I can't reveal my clients or the product lines, still in development at the time, due to confidentiality agreements. This went on for 5 minutes, until the interview basically derailed and she ended it, telling me that I was uncooperative and I shouldn't expect a call, after cursing my luck and damning that wretched woman. Seriously, who insists on asking such a stupid question? I can't reveal who it is, because I breach contract, and in consulting, you should respect your client's privacy. I did get a call a couple of weeks later from a board member who heard about my interview and offered me a job. Was a good year, and my interviewer got flack some months after she left the company because she started revealing details about her clients, which got an entire team at that firm in trouble because of breach of contract. Big lesson. Kids, if you have a confidentiality agreement that is still ongoing and hasn't expired, you should respect it, even in an interview for another job. Otherwise, kiss your careers goodbye. I sat in on an interview for a PA with my boss. When on the subject of marriage and kids, my boss asked the interviewee if she had married out of love or if her family had arranged it. She answered love, and we thought that was the end of it. He then proceeded to ask if she was raising her kids as Sikhs and if she would be comfortable working in an environment with lots of men. I cringed so much in that interview, but the lady held her own and is actually still working for us. There was no malice in what my boss was asking. He was genuinely just interested in her culture, but went the complete wrong way about it. Just the other week when we were all out for a meal, he kept asking her if his pronunciation of basmati was right. The best of it is she came from an Indian family but has lived the Western culture all her life. She's just as clueless as he, but finds it all very hilarious. I was actually asked for the username and password to my Facebook, Twitter and any other social media accounts I may have. I flat said no, that information will not be forthcoming. The interviewer looked up as though to say, just who the frick do you think you are, and replied, "Excuse me?" I replied that I never saw the use or need for social media. I have the ability to instantly message, call or go meet people within my circle in person, and I felt that social media was a tool further used to divide us rather than bring us together. He just stared at me until I finally said, I follow a 3P rule when I am online. I never post anything I don't want my parents, a priest or a predator finding out, which means you can rest assured that there will be no impropriety to harm your business. I am here to make money by making you money. He continued to stare at me and I finally said, I'm sorry I seem to be wasting your time. I thank you anyway and you have a wonderful day. I got a call 3 weeks later. Same guy. He actually tried looking me up and couldn't find me or a reference to me. I didn't get the job, but I did get considered. The moral to this tale: follow the 3P rule and never ever use your real name, nor should you ever allow anyone else to use your real name if you can at all control it. I live in Korea, so the interview questions can be very different from what we are used to in the West. It is common to ask what your parents do, if you are married or plan on getting married, how much alcohol you can drink. This is not to determine if you have a drinking problem, but because after work drinking with co-workers is a big part of Korean work culture, so the more booze you can handle the better. How much money you have, religion, and when you apply for a job you have to send a photo of yourself along with your application. If you are not deemed good looking enough, and often if you are black or Indian or another undesirable race, you won't get the job. It is slowly changing though. I was applying for a government job. I'm Canadian, and one of the questions on the application was, are you native Canadian? Now I'm not Aboriginal by any means, but I was born and raised in Canada. In most countries that makes you a native of that country, but not here. As a means of protest, I checked the yes box. I fully expected that if I was interviewed I'd have to defend my choice to say I was a native Canadian. I was interviewed, but the question never came up. Much to my surprise, I was also hired. Full disclosure, I'm not down on Aboriginal rights, and in fact support said rights. I'm fine with terms like Aboriginal, First Peoples, Original People, etc. At the time I simply objected to my own government telling me I wasn't a native Canadian. It's 20 years later now, I'm a calmer person, and it isn't as big a deal as it was to me as a young man. At least we no longer use Indian. That crap was confusing. I have interviewed with several third-party recruiters that have asked what other companies I'm interviewing at. It was an irrelevant question that was only asked so that the recruiters could contact the other companies. For what it's worth, they need to know if you already are talking to a potential employer. To avoid any hassle about who got you the job, you or them, it's for your own good to tell them. At an interview for a temp agency I was asked to sign a release of information form. One of the things on it was a release so they could check my medical records. I do not let anyone see my medical records except some other providers. I marked that part out and initialed it before signing. When the interviewer looked through the forms she saw the mark and asked what is this. I casually commented I didn't see how my health records would be relevant. She just said okay. I got the job. I wanted to volunteer at a pregnancy resource center a few years ago. I didn't even want to work with their clients, mostly help out preparing for events or things like that. I just wanted to volunteer to help what I thought was a worthy cause. They asked me if I engaged in premarital sex and if I attended a church. I told them I didn't think you needed to attend church to have a relationship with God and that I wouldn't discuss my sex life with them. They said that I would have to sign a contract agreeing to abstain from premarital sex and that I would have to find a church to attend. I said I wouldn't sign it and they never called me back. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.